Welcome back to another Film Geek video. Well, the month of October has come and gone, and it is time for me to rank all of the new movies I saw in the month of October from my favorite to least favorite film. Now, this list is just an opinion-based list. It is not based off of any Metacritic or anything Rotten Tomato percentage or anything like that. These are all just my personal opinion and how much I enjoyed these films that I saw, and so on and so forth. Your ranking may be different than my own, so you know what? Go ahead and in the comments below, give me a list of all of the movies that you saw in the month of October, and let me know what your favorite and least favorite movie was also. I have a feeling that a lot of us are going to have the same least favorite movie this month, but who knows? I could be wrong. Well, this month did deliver in the films. I saw 12 new movies, some in theaters, some in streaming services, and most of those films were very solid. A lot of them got the good old at least watch it seal of approval. Not every one of them may be something that you want to spend your money on in theaters, but all of these films that I'm going to mention, at least the top 10 films on this list, are definitely worth your time to check out. So you know what, guys? It is time for us to hitch a ride on the information superhighway and head on over to the internet, because it is time for us to rank all of the new movies I saw in the month of October 2024. Okay guys, let's get this party started, shall we? Let's talk about my favorite film of the month. And you know what? That movie, that honor, goes to VHS Beyond! Now, VHS Beyond was a Shudder original that popped up. I enjoyed this film. This is a horror anthology movie that focuses mostly on sci-fi horror. I believe it delivered like 5-6 stories. I can't remember, to be perfectly honest, off the top of my head. I think it was 5. The thing that I really loved about this movie the most was the wraparound story. They did this whole like alien abduction videotape, like a found footage movie, and it did a really great job of just keeping you intrigued and wondering what was going to happen next. And only one of the stories, I would say, not that I disliked the story, but there was one of them, because of all the shaky cam and everything else, I didn't really enjoy it thoroughly. Like, I didn't like it as much as all the other ones. I didn't hate it by any means, but I really enjoyed everything altogether. There was just some very strange and different stories, some really cool ideas. So if you haven't seen any of the VHS films, well, what they are a horror anthology series, and I believe this is the 7th one in the series, and each one of them, well, I guess from 1, 2, and 3 were just horror anthologies, and from that point on, they kind of all take on a theme. There was like VHS 1980, VHS 90, stuff like that. And then this one, Beyond, focusing mostly on, well, actually not mostly, all on sci-fi horror, and it picks up on different types. Like, we got a good creature feature, we had some psychological horror in here, there's some really campy, very Bride of Reanimator, kind of Stuart Gordon type of movie that was written and directed by Justin Long. His wife also, I'm so sorry, I can't think of her name, but she also helped write the film. It was about these weird mutated dog people and all. It was all in all just a really fun film, and I feel like if you're a horror fan, there was definitely something in it for every single person. So let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is still kind of keeping within the horror genre a little bit. It was a horror comedy that I absolutely loved, and that is Your Monster. So let's move Your Monster right up here to number 2. If you're unfamiliar with the story of Your Monster, the way this worked was, so a young woman and her boyfriend break up. They have a very bad breakup. She is in the hospital recovering from what we find out later was surgery due to cancer. And while she's in the hospital, her boyfriend ditches her, dumps her right then and there. It's just like, oh my goodness, this is gonna take a lot of work and I just don't know if I have it in me. And the little weasel bounces on her. So she is so angry and all when she comes back home from the hospital. Her best friend is just not really helping her out a whole lot. She's just very superficial and so on. And because of all of the, anxiety and anger and bitterness that she feels, her personal monster comes to life. Maybe. The movie kind of keeps it a bit ambiguous on whether or not the monster is truly there, but this movie delivers in a lot of areas. It tells a very good story, nothing that we haven't heard before, but I really enjoy the way that this film told the story and delivered its message. It has a very good message to it about just basically how we should treat each other in relationships, or, you know, treat each other better after a relationship. If you're a person who actually came or was ever in a very toxic relationship, then you're going to really identify a lot with what this poor woman goes through in this entire film. But at the same time, while you're identifying and feeling sorry for her, you are also laughing your ever-living ass off in this film. I thought it was hilarious. The cast does an outstanding job. This is not like a high-budget film. This is an indie film. It's just a nice little personal film, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. These are the kind of movies that I absolutely love getting out to theaters and supporting, and I hope you folks do too. So number 2 on my list, Your Monster. Number 3. Now, number 3, I am going to jump out of the horror genre, and in this case, I am just going to say that this was a just all-around well-made, well-acted film, and some people might find it a bit boring and a bit draggy, but I honestly think if you just let the movie, unfold in front of you and watch just the gorgeous cinematography, you are going to find so much in this film, and that movie is The Outrun. This film tells a story of a woman who is trying to get over her alcohol addiction, so she moves into the countryside away from London to basically cleanse her soul. She is also a biologist, so she takes a job in the countryside looking for these birds, right? So looking for this rare bird that may be extinct, and it kind of becomes a metaphor for the situation that she's in. And this movie is just absolutely gorgeous. This is one of those eye candy type of films with scenery and the way it's made. And yeah, it could come off as kind of a boring film because there are lots of moments in this movie where it's just dead silence, where she's just kind of a very introspective moment staring off into the ocean or taking in nature or something. And the cinematographer, the director, they just capture those moments very beautifully. So if you're a person who just likes a movie that takes its time developing its character, telling its story, and just letting everything unfold in front of you in a very beautiful way, this is definitely a good movie for you to check out if you're somebody who you have struggled with addiction or sobriety and things of that sort. This might be a movie that might be something to inspire you, or also let you know that there are other folks out there who have gone through the same thing as you, because I do believe this was based off of true events of the writer of this film. So, number 4, we are not really necessarily brightening this up a little bit, but we're not taking it back to horror. Now, this movie was, in my opinion, I felt like this film was advertised as a horror film, but what it delivered was a really cool, twisty-turny thrill ride. And it was an absolute blast to watch this film, and that was Caddo Lake. This is another film that had absolutely spectacular cinematography. This tells the story of people that are living on this lake in Texas or Louisiana. Texas. It's in Texas. And this lake is like a flooded lake. It's a man-made lake. And so there's like all these weird caverns, basically like all these trees and everything that create these, I would almost say like swamp-like areas of the lake. And it just makes this really cool feel to this whole film. So it tells the story of a family that live on the lake, Caddo Lake, and their daughter has gone missing. And it tells the story of trying to find this young girl. But at the same time, it also is telling another story of another person and their things that are going on in their life at this lake. In some way, all of these stories that are happening here come together in this film and kind of mingle themselves into each other. And the film just ends where you're just like, okay, well, that was something or other. That was wild. This movie is streaming on Max. It's still there. It's not necessarily a scare fest. There are some very tense and suspenseful moments, but I never felt like the movie was trying to outright scare me, but it does deliver one hell of a story, and it does actually keep you on the edge of your seat for most of the film. There are some downtimes for you to catch your breath, but there are some absolutely tense moments in this film. So that's how it finds itself where it is on the list. Okay, so that brings us to number 5. And we're kind of diving back into horror for this one. We're kind of diving back into comedy for this one. We're kind of diving into a little bit of everything with the movie Rumors. Rumors, I will 100% tell you this, it is an acquired taste. This date goes back to the good old days of the art house films that I used to like to go see in the 90s. We unfortunately don't have any more art house theaters here in our area, at least here. We kind of do. There are some privately owned theaters that show some more unknown movies and so on and so forth, some artsy-fartsy kind of films. But all in all, most everything has just gone to our regular theaters these days, which is cool, so I still get to see my good old indie films. But enough of that. So anyways, Rumors. Rumors tells the story of 7 leaders of 7 countries. Basically, it's the G7. Okay, if you're familiar with the G7, that's what this movie focuses on. 7 world leaders get together to do their world leader talking and things of that sort. And wouldn't you know it, it's the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse. It's a giant brain. It might be the end of the world. It might just be these people going crazy. This movie has a lot going on in it, and it really doesn't explain a whole lot of anything. But I cannot sit here and lie. I was thoroughly entertained throughout this entire film. I really enjoyed this movie. I love the touches of surrealism. I thought the comedy was spot on. It really hit my sense of humor. If you're somebody that likes that kind of odd, slightly surrealistic humor where like crazy weird things are happening, but everybody's just kind of like acting a little normal or something, like this is just day-to-day life, this movie might be for you. It's crazy, it's weird. Like I say, there's zombies, there's a giant brain, all sorts of craziness, and nothing necessarily gets any explanations whatsoever. This movie is fairly ambiguous. It leaves it up to the viewer what exactly is going on. You can interpret it in 100 different ways, in my opinion. So if you're somebody that likes to watch a film that doesn't necessarily give you everything you want, but it also tells a pretty fun story, but maybe there's a little stuff there that it doesn't explain, but you're okay with that, filling in the blanks yourself, this might be a fun film for you. I have no idea if it's still out in theaters. I think it just had a very limited run, so keep looking for it on streaming services if you're into something that isn't necessarily a normal movie. Alrighty, that brings us to another movie that honestly, I guess it still kind of falls into the weirdness category, and that is Daddy's Head. So Daddy's Head right here at number 6. Okay, so Daddy's Head. Let me just take a quick swig here. Woof, I'm getting all verklempt. Alright, so Daddy's Head is an interesting movie. There's a lot of stuff going on in this film. It ties into all sorts of different subject matter, and I think it handles a lot of very touchy subjects in a very good way, in a very scary way also. I didn't really consider this movie super scary, but there were some really good moments in this film. So anyways, it tells the story of a young boy whose father has passed away, and he was the last blood family that this little boy had. His stepmother is still alive and is the one taking care of him. Now, while they're living in this house, they're living kind of secluded out in the woods, and while they're out there living in the woods, this creature suddenly shows up at their house, and this creature has the face of the dead father. And let's just say spooky wackiness ensues. And this is another one of those kind of like allegory horror movies, except it really does pretty well solidify, unlike some monster movies that are allegories, that this monster was real. And I liked that about it. It kind of gave the movie a little bit more depth, because you're like, okay, these people actually went through this. This wasn't just some weird mindfuck movie. This was pretty wild stuff. And then you're wondering, okay, what the hell was that thing? Not a lot of questions get answered in this movie, but it is an extremely entertaining horror film if you're into a slow burn. Well, no, I take that back. It wasn't necessarily a slow burn, but it necessarily wasn't a really fast action-paced movie. It kind of falls somewhere in between those two. But all in all, this is on Shudder right now. You should check this film out if you're a horror fan and you like something that likes to tell a story that isn't so like on the nose. You know what I'm saying? You can watch this movie and walk away from it and be like, wow, what a fun little monster movie. Or you can walk away from this film and be like, oh, wow, there was so much deeper meaning. I learned so many different things with the symbolism. Or not, it's up to you. You can take this movie either way, and that's what I really liked about this film. It's just one of those movies that you can watch and get enjoyment out of, and if you really want to, you can dig deeper and find a little bit more meaning. Okay, so that brings us to our next film, number 7. Now, this is interesting because this film hasn't even come out in theaters yet. It is still waiting. I was given the opportunity to go see this movie before it came out in theaters, and I had an absolute blast, and that is RedOne. Now, RedOne is coming out November 15th, I believe, and it is the story of Santa Claus. And wouldn't you know it, good old Santa Claus gets kidnapped. But this isn't your normal Santa Claus. Oh no, this Santa Claus works out and lifts weights, and he's like a tough guy and all. Oh, did I mention The Rock is his sidekick in this movie? So when he goes missing, it's up to The Rock to go find him. But, this guy's more of a security guard. He really doesn't have any tracking skills. Well, that's where Chris Evans comes into it, because Chris Evans plays the world's greatest tracker, but he's on the naughty list. So it looks like this elf is gonna have to work with some guy on the dirty naughty list. This movie was a lot of fun, folks. It was a blast. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a fun family holiday film. It's not something we've seen in theaters for a long time, and I keep saying it was fun. It was. It was just pure fun entertainment. This is nothing more than a movie. You sit down with the fam, you shove some popcorn in your mouth, the kids have a great time, and everybody walks away with a smile on their face. That's this kind of film. I also appreciated that they dove a lot into practical effects. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of CGI in this movie. Some good, some bad, but what they did that was really cool was lots of makeup work, real sets, there was real built sets, and it just had this really nice, solid vibe to it. Just a nice, fun, heartwarming, holiday, good time. Nothing that's going to probably set the world on fire, and maybe this time next year we may not necessarily remember this movie, but the point is, this holiday season, I think it's going to be something that everybody's going to enjoy. Okay, so that brings me to number 8, and we're going back into the spooky, scary, thrillery kind of movie with Netflix original Don't Move. So we'll put that right there at number 8. Don't Move tells the story of a woman who is going out for a hike one day, and she gets involved with a serial killer. Let's not beat around the bush, all right? This serial killer injects her with a serum that will slowly begin to affect. She has 20 minutes, and then her body will be completely paralyzed. I mean, it's slowly paralyzing through those 20 minutes. So she has a chance for survival, but a very slim one. This film was intense. I mean, absolutely intense. There is a lot of, yes, there is some silly, goofy moments where you're sitting there going, why did she do that? But that's pretty much every horror movie, isn't it? All movies like this, there's always bound to be something where you're like, what is this? But the point is that this was a fun Netflix film. It's not in theaters. It's not going to cost you anything but your time. It's definitely worth your watch. I had a lot of fun with it. I might actually sit down and watch it again to see if there was anything I missed. I really like the villain in this story, although I would say his motives aren't 100% explained. I think they give you enough of a hint on why this guy is doing what he's doing. So, yeah, he was also, I would say, a pretty cool sadistic villain. He was just one of those guys, there was no sympathy or anything, just a straight up douchebag, evil human being, and I appreciate that because I'm really getting tired of this whole sympathetic villain. I don't want to feel sorry for the bad guy. I just want the bad guy to be a good bad guy. Can we do that? Okay. All right. Moving on to number 9. Now, number 9 is kind of a throwback film. This took me back to the 1980s, maybe even early 90s, to those good old-fashioned teen adventure films where something spooky's going on in your neighborhood and the local teenage kids are going to get to the bottom of this. And that movie is Monster Summer. Monster Summer tells the story of young teenagers. I think they're supposed to be 15, 16 years old. They're not, well, no, I take that back. I think maybe some of them were driving age. Anyways, I digress. So these teenagers happen upon a monster. Yes, there's a monster in their town wreaking havoc upon this small island community, and it's up to these teenagers to stop said monster. Guys, this was a super fun film. Like I said, it's a throwback to those good old-fashioned adventure teen movies of yore, like The Goonies, Monster Squad, my personal favorite, The Explorers, movies like that. And this film is a lot of fun because it updates the genre. Now, it does take place, I believe it takes place like 96, 97, but it has people that are in this film that younger kids, teenagers are going to identify with, and it's just a fun film to be able to sit down, have a good time with the fam, and watch a slightly spooky movie that's not going to scare the pants off of the little guys, but then again, it's not necessarily not going to scare them. Just a fun, playful, jump scary kind of thing. It was pretty tame, to be perfectly honest, but all in all, fun film. The creature design was a good old-fashioned classic monster, if you want to call this thing a monster. But anywho, super fun, good makeup job. It walks the line of cartoony and spooky, something perfect that's for kids, not something that's going to scare the pants off an adult, but something that's definitely going to, maybe make the kid want to get up for an extra drink of water in the evening. Okay, so, whoo, boy, like I said, man, this list is just going on and on and on. All right, so that brings me to number 10. And this is the last film on the list that I would say is watchable and worth your time. And that is the movie Plan B. Whoop, whoop. Plan B tells the story of a woman who has a one-night stand with her awkward neighbor, and wouldn't you know it, she finds out that she's pregnant from that one-night stand. Now, I'm not seeing this guy as a viable father or somebody that she really wants to spend the rest of her life with. The time is ticking to try to find someone that she thinks is going to be a suitable person to pursue a parenting group with. This is kind of a throwback romantic comedy to the late 90s, early 2000s. It has that same kind of humor in it. This is a movie that back then would probably have, Vince Vaughn would probably be in this movie if it was the year 2000 or something like that. But instead we have John Heater, which, hey, John Heater, can't go wrong there. Napoleon Dynamite starring in this movie. I thought this was a really fun film. It's a VOD movie. It was nothing that's going to set the world on fire, but I do honestly feel like it was definitely worth like the $5.99, $4.99 price to take a watch for this film. It's definitely worth it. I got a good few laughs out of it. It's nothing insanely special, it's nothing crazy. It's just to turn your brain off kind of comedy, stuff some popcorn in your mouth, and take in a film, like you haven't seen in a long time. And that's basically what this movie is. It's just one of those good old-fashioned romantic comedies that has just a little bit of a twist of Rooney to it. Okay, now, as I promised, the unwatchable films of October. Now, both of these movies I would say are interchangeable, but they're not. To be perfectly honest, one of these movies is much more watchable than the other film. And that is number 11, Time Cut. Time Cut. Okay, Time Cut. This is a nerfed slasher film that's currently on Netflix. It's PG-13 or TV-14, whatever the rating system is for television. And man, guys, you know what? I just did a review for this film. It's on my channel, so I'm not going to dive in too deep for this movie because I feel like I really kind of ripped this movie to shreds in my review. Not that it didn't deserve it. This is just an all-around unwatchable film. It's extremely boring. Calling this movie a slasher is almost pointless. You never see one kill, and granted, I know it's TV-14, but I mean, for God's sakes, we don't even get to see a blade entering a body. Every time there is a freaking kill, it just pulls away. Every time. And not like there's tons of them. I believe there was like 2, maybe 3 kills in this entire movie. It was in a completely, horribly forgettable slasher film. And honestly, guys, if you see it on Netflix and you see it there, don't watch it. Just leave it alone. Don't mess with it. It's worthless. I hate to say that. I really do. I hate saying mean, negative things about films that people put their heart and soul and worked hard on. But guys, whoo, boy, it just isn't worth your time. So that was the last one. You could probably tell by looking down there that it's the Joker 2. I'm not even going to... Sorry, Joker, Folie à Deux. Yeah, Boy, do I need to go into how bad this movie was. Do I have to go into how it just completely missed the mark and how this is a sequel that never even should have existed? How the first film set this up to be a solo movie, so it had this really cool ending that you could kind of leave it up to yourself to figure out exactly what happened. It wasn't completely ambiguous, but it gave you enough wiggle room, and then they made a sequel to it. It reminded me of American Graffiti 2. There was already a first film, and in fact, in American Graffiti 2, they already gave you the ending to every character in that movie. You knew how their life turned out at the end of American Graffiti 1. Why in God's green earth did you make an American Graffiti 2? And I do believe it got just about as good of a critic score as Joker. All in all, guys, it was just a pointless movie, and I can't even call this movie a cash grab because I think it was a complete and absolute financial flop. I do not know why this movie was made, and I don't know. Should I blame the studio? Should I blame the actors? Should I blame the director? I think everybody is honestly to blame for this film. I think they thought, you know, the first movie was so awesome and so many people liked it. There is absolutely no way we can fail with a sequel. I'm gonna make it a musical. What? I'm gonna make it a musical. Oh, okay. Maybe that's a bad idea? No. Musical. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking with this film. All in all, guys, it was a pointless waste of time, and that is all I'm going into it. If you want to get more of my thoughts on that film, you can check out my full review. It was one of the first reviews I did in the month of October. Total letdown of a movie. Okay, guys, well, there you have it. All of the movies that I watched in the month of October ranked from my favorite to least favorite of the month. So next month, I will be back for I'll be back in November or December or whenever I put this video up, but I'll rank all of the new movies I see in that month also. So until then, guys, thanks again for watching The Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.